A bill to lower gun age from 21 to 18 has young people talking. You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. 2 people were killed and at least 5 were injured Thursday after a shooting on Florida State University's campus. The 20-year-old gunman was a sheriff's deputy's son, and a service weapon was found at the scene, according to police. And in that same city, in the state's capital rotunda, Florida lawmakers are considering whether to lower the age of buying and selling a gun from 21 to 18 for the third time. The bill passed overwhelmingly in the House but is stalled in the Senate. At the University of Central Florida, the measure has both support and opposition among 18 to 20-year-olds who would be most impacted by the bill. But Mary Connolly, president of the College Republicans at UCF, says if 18-year-olds are old enough to vote and serve in the military, they should have the right to a gun.
If they're old enough to be drafted, I think that is a pretty strong argument that they are also old enough to own a gun so long as they meet the requirements.
But others say lowering the age would make communities less safe. More on this bill and how young people are reacting to it. That's ahead on The Wrap. The big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these news headlines. Two people were killed and at least 5 were injured after a midday shooting at Florida State University Thursday. The shooting happened near FSU's student union. The 20-year-old gunman was a sheriff's deputy's son, and a service weapon was found at the scene, police say. FSU senior Sam Swartz was in class when the shooting happened.
About 15 seconds before the actual shooting happened, a bunch of kids started running around screaming, and we're just like, oh, what's going on? And then probably maybe 10 gunshots happened, and everyone's like, oh my God.
All Florida State events were canceled through Friday. This is the second shooting at FSU in just over 10 years. In November 2014, a gunman shot 3 people at the campus library. Florida's Attorney General James Uthmeyer this week announced plans to send additional prosecutors to State Attorney Monique Worrell's office. Central Florida Public Media reporter Joe Mario Pedersen explains it's to help with a backlog of 13,000 non-arrest cases from Orange and Osceola counties.
Earlier this month, Worrell announced her office would no longer accept non-arrest cases from law enforcement, saying that her prosecutors don't have the capacity to review the current backlog. Uthmeyer announced plans to send additional prosecutors and said his office would be monitoring Worrell's non-arrest policy. Worrell announced she welcomes the state's help.
That was Joe Mario Pedersen reporting. The Florida House this week unanimously passed a bill that seeks to prevent students from having cell phones at schools. The legislation would stop students from using cell phones and other wireless devices during the entire school day, not just during instructional time. The bill would also require school districts to designate areas where students may use devices. Florida House Representative Demi Busada, a Republican, is the bill's sponsor.
Cell phones not only cause constant distractions to a student's focus during the school day, which impedes their ability to learn, but it also has shown to increase bullying.
The proposal comes 2 years after lawmakers barred students from using cell phones and other wireless devices during instructional time. A similar Senate proposal must pass 2 more committees before going to the full chamber. After bouncing into the last spot of the Eastern Conference, the Orlando Magic will play their first game in the NBA playoffs Sunday. They'll face the number 2 Celtics in Boston. The Magic earned the 7th seed in the conference after finishing the regular season with 41 wins and 41 losses. The game will tip off Sunday at 3:30 p.m. This will be the 4th time the Magic and the Celtics face off in the postseason. These stories and more on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. Arts and culture funding cuts are rippling through communities across the country, including right here in Central Florida.
You never feel secure as it is. What I hope is that our community steps up and recognizes the definite impact that will mirror a negative decline for the underserved.
How these cuts are impacting programs designed for inclusivity. That's on this week's Spotlight. Get it wherever you get this podcast. 2 people were killed and at least 5 were injured Thursday after a shooting on Florida State University's campus. The 20-year-old gunman was a sheriff's deputy's son, and a service weapon was found at the scene, according to police. Also in Tallahassee, Florida lawmakers are considering whether to lower the age of buying and selling a firearm from 21 to 18. Proponents of the change argue that if an 18-year-old can be drafted and fight for their country, they should have the right to buy a gun. But opponents point out that gun violence is a leading cause of death of young people, and putting more guns in their hands would make them and the public less safe. Central Florida Public Media's Rick Brunson has more, and a warning. This story opens with the brief sound of a gun being fired.
That's the sound of an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. Under current Florida law, you have to be at least 21 years old to buy or sell this gun or any other firearm. Some lawmakers here want to see that changed and for the third consecutive year are pushing to lower the age to 18. That's what it was before the Parkland massacre 7 years ago. That Valentine's Day at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in South Florida, a 19-year-old shot and killed 17 students and staff and wounded 17 more. In the wake of the tragedy, the legislature passed a bipartisan bill that raised the age of buying a firearm to 21. Then Governor Rick Scott, a Republican, signed it into law. Current Governor Ron DeSantis says the age restriction was a mistake and has urged the legislature to repeal it. During a recent press conference, DeSantis spoke about the issue.
It totally eliminated rights for young adults. I mean, you have some 20-year-old Marine be out there carrying a firearm in Fallujah, back where I served back in the day, and then they come here and they can't purchase a rifle to go hunting or something like that. It just is, it's not something that is consistent with due process.
For the past 2 years, Republicans in the Florida House have passed repeals only to see them stalled by Republicans in the Senate. This session, the legislation passed again overwhelmingly in the House and has once again been sent to the Senate for consideration. Mary Connolly is a 20-year-old biology major at the University of Central Florida. She's also president of the College Republicans at UCF. She supports the change.
I can understand the reasoning for the original bill, but my reasoning for supporting this bill is mainly because most people that own guns own them to protect themselves and their family, and I think that it's important not to forget that, and I think that younger people should also have that privilege.
But Camelia Ortiz, vice president of the College Democrats at UCF and the daughter of a Marine, argues lowering the age would make communities less safe as more guns would go into the hands of younger people who may not have the training and maturity to properly use them.
When they join the military at 18, they don't have access to weapons just right off the bat. They spend months at Parris Island or wherever their training may be for their specified branch, getting very, very in-depth training from professionals. So it's entirely different from an 18-year-old civilian being able to just access a gun.
Ortiz vividly recalls being in 9th grade at Osceola High School in Kissimmee the day a 19-year-old shot up Stoneman Douglas High in Parkland. Her algebra teacher broke down in tears describing the news to her and her classmates. 7 years later, she says the trauma is still fresh. Broward County School Board Chair Deborah Hickson agrees. Her husband, Chris Hickson, was among those killed that day at Stoneman Douglas. She gave public comment at a House hearing on the legislation earlier this session.
And now you want to repeal things. And to me, that makes me feel like you have forgotten who my husband and the other 16 victims were. That's just not right because it will not make our communities safer.
Last month, a federal appellate court upheld Florida's current law, noting people under 21 were restricted from purchasing firearms at the time of the nation's founding. But after the court's 8-4 ruling, Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier said his office would not enforce the state statute because he believes it violates the U.S. Constitution. Rick Brunson, Central Florida Public Media.
That's it for the wrap this week. This podcast was produced by Central Florida Public Media, with assistance from News Director LaToya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.